Ivan, don't forget yung report natin sa national, yung mga event natin mula in January to ano, more on ano lang tayo eh, marketing promotions and yung website, social media. Pero yung starting May,
Hello, Daryl.
Yes.
Nag-send ako ng another intro for speaker. Kindly check na lang na update. Thank you.
Nasa script?
Wala. Sinend ko separately through Messenger. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so magsisimula na tayo sa pag-accept ng participants. Tsaka yung sa live pala, pwede na ding magsimula.
Ivan, pagka nag-admit ka na, i-reset ko na, wala na tayong waiting room kasi para hindi nag-error yung projected files.
Okay po, sir.
Automatic na yan, papasok at papasok na sila nang wala ng acceptance.
Okay po, sir.
Okay, good morning everyone. Please settle down and we will start our event in 5 minutes. Again, we will start our event in 5 minutes. This webinar is brought to you by MRSP NCR Philippines Student Chapter and Adamson University. Please take note that we are live on the official Facebook page and YouTube channel of MRSP NCR. Now, for our short guidelines, for everyone to have the best experience and convenience, may we ask everyone to follow these guidelines. So number 1, please turn off your microphone while the program is being held on. You may turn off your cameras during the event, and please utilize the conversation feature in the Zoom app very well. And for those participants who have entered, you may kindly please use your full name along with a photo displayed on the Zoom app. For your questions, you may use the raise hands feature on the Zoom app and the chat feature on the said app. You may, for those who are watching on the YouTube channel and Facebook Live, you may use the comment section for your questions. Keep in mind that irrelevant, foul, or inappropriate comments will be prohibited during the webinar. Please be reminded that only registered MRSP members will receive e-certificates for this webinar. However, for those who have interested and have plans on registering as a MRSP NCR member, on or before September 30, they will still receive their e-certificates once registered. The link for the evaluation form will be posted on the webinar on your screens. And lastly, the data collected and data submitted complies with the pertinent data privacy regulations promulgated by the National Privacy Commission and will be used for and no other purposes than to comply with the government regulations for the conduct of the event. By joining in this webinar, you can send your photo and a video recording by MRSP. So while waiting, sit back, relax, and enjoy. For more updates, you may follow us on Facebook and Twitter with YouTube. For Facebook, we have facebook.com/mrsp.ncr.ph. And for YouTube and Twitter, we have MRSP NCR Chapter. So let us wait for the others to join our session and allow me to acknowledge and give thanks for the following universities who have joined our webinar. Starting off with Adamson University, Ateneo de Zamboanga University, Batangas State University, Bulacan State University, Canosa Academy, Lipa, Claver National High School, Don Mariano Marcos Memorial State University, MLUC, Iris, Iloilo Science and Technology University, Isabela State University, Cabagan, FEU Institute of Technology, Lyceum of the Philippines University, Cavite, Malayan Colleges of Laguna, Mariano Marcos State University, FINMA University of Pangasinan, Pangasinan State University, Urdaneta, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Binyan Campus, Polytechnic University of the Philippines Institute of Technology, Polytechnic University of the Philippines Graduate School, Polytechnic University of the Philippines Main Campus, Polytechnic University of the Philippines Parañaque Campus, President Corazon C. Aquino High School, Quezon City University, St. Louis University, St. Nicholas College of Business and Technology, Technological University of the Philippines Taguig, Technological University of the Philippines Visayas, University of Antique, University of Angas, Universidad de Manila, University of Santo Tomas, Analog Devices Incorporated, Dagupan Electric Corporation, Department of Education, Department of Public Works and Highways, Saudi Aerospace Engineering Industries, Western Institute of Technology, and lastly, Wild Fruit Orchards and Farms Incorporated. Again, thank you and May you enjoy this webinar. Again, welcome to MRSP NCR's Commercializing Robotics Research Webinar Series 5 with the theme Breakthrough, Innovation, Creativity, Resilience by Embracing Change and Transformation Through Research. Good morning. Once again, I am Daryl John Medina and I will be the Master of Ceremony and I will join you in this prestigious event. Before we start, let us offer a moment of silence with our prayer to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem.
kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, pero sa sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tulakaw.
And there we have it. Again, welcome everyone for those who are participating with us in this Zoom meeting and on the Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So to formally start this event, with his warm and opening remarks, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Engineer Hubert Q. Temprosa, an associate full-time professor at Adamson University. Engineer Hubert, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi, Daryl. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can you see me now as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Mechatronics and Robotics Society of the Philippines, the NCR Chapter, and the Adamson University, thank you to each and every one of you for being with us today. So for the different academic institutions, to the different prestigious industries, we are very pleased to welcome you all for this webinar series for the MRSP NCR chapter. So we are very pleased to welcome you all for this series of seminar that is commercializing robotics research. So without further ado, again, I would like to say thank you to all of you and for being with us today. God bless all and be safe, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Temprosa, for that very warm opening remarks. Now, for the main event, yes, of our webinar, the reason why we are all here. Our speaker is the Project Development Officer of Adamson University's Neuroscience and Technology Incubation Center, funded by DOST under the Higher Education Institution Readiness for Innovation and Technopreneurship, or HERIT, program, as well as a full-time faculty member of the Computer Engineering Department at the College of Engineering of Adamson University. He finished his bachelor's degree in computer engineering at Adamson University, Manila, Philippines, and his master's degree in computer science and information engineering, majoring in intelligent software design at Tsinghua University in Hsinchu, Taiwan. His research interests include artificial intelligence for sustainable development and data analytics for social development. He is a frequent speaker to local universities and organizations on artificial intelligence and innovation. He has several publications about artificial intelligence published and presented internationally. He also holds a Philippine utility model patent entitled Street Violence, Surveillance and Alert System and Methods thereof. Engineer Dylan Josh Lopez is a certified research development project manager accredited by the American Project Management Association, a lifetime professional member of the Institute of Computer Engineers of the Philippines. He is also a member of the Policy Research and Insights Council of the Analytics Association of the Philippines and an honorary member of P Tau Phi Scholastic Honor Society of the Republic of China in Taiwan. Let us all welcome Engineer Dylan Josh Lopez. Sir, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I hope you're having a wonderful day. So today we're going to talk about commercializing robotics. So it's somehow a different topic from what we usually have in the basic talks. We are now looking into an age where how can we actually get money from our research, not just for publications or directly going to market, but we are now looking at the other methods where we can gain money from research. So it's not just now all about how to do the research, but also how do we get money or how do we get our return of investment. Okay? So allow me to share my screen. Okay, so may I just confirm that everybody see my screen right now?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So I will, for the sake of my bandwidth, I'll be stop sharing my video for the duration of my talk. Maybe later on as we do the question and answer portion. All right. So let's talk about how do we get money from research. How do we commercialize robotics? Okay, so we're going to talk about how do we conceptualize this from research to market. Okay, very uncommon topics for most of engineers and scientists, but this is something that we really need to learn so that we will not just waste our efforts and after just wasting all of our time or spending all of our time hard working on our research, how do we really get the maximum output for the fruits of our research? So what's for today? We're going to talk about four things. We're going to talk about a bit on innovation and R&D, how to really set the foundations of your research, and how do we look into more on the innovation side, not just the technology side. The second part, we're going to talk about finding innovation. How do we really find the nitty gritty and all of the problem solving areas that we really need to find when we are creating our solutions? It's not just looking into, oh, let's do IoT, then that's fine, right? No, we really look into what's the problem, and we'll find out in part two. And then we're going to talk about how do we evaluate this innovation? What level are we in right now? What could we do more, or what we should wait on the next process of our innovation stage? And lastly, let's commercialize. This is not just in robotics, but generally in IT. How do we commercialize, or what are your techniques to commercialize robotics, information technology, and all technologies actually in our practices? So let's dive right in. Let's talk about innovation today. So, innovation and R&D. So why do we really do research, right? Is it just for promotion? Is it just for the sake of we are told by our bosses? What really is our purpose in research? We, as researchers, engineers, or educators, are prompted to be academics, and as us, of course, we are prompted to do research. But what really is the core of research is innovation. We are looking into opportunities where we can practice our skills, our talents, our expertise to solve real life problems. And those problems contribute to the society. Given this definition of innovation by the Little Black Book of Innovation, so innovation is a process that combines discovering an opportunity, blueprinting an idea to seize that opportunity, and implementing that idea to achieve results. And always remember, no impact, there's no innovation. We should always remember that we should always aim that our research should have impact, not even in society, maybe in your community, maybe on the specific field that you have. If we don't have really that sense of impact, we are not really putting innovation in our research. We're not having that something new. It doesn't have to be explosive, but it have to be changing in a sense of we're creating impact to our society or in our communities. So what is not innovation? Okay, so first misconception about innovation, that innovation and creativity are the same things. No, they're not. Creativity is looking more on the aesthetic side, or how beautiful is it, or how unique are you. But innovation looks at combination of creativity and how would you do that to create impact to people. How can you deliver that creativity of yours, considering the technological aspects, for the benefit of mankind or the benefit of the people around you? How can you really help them? Creativity just lets you do, of course, maybe your expression. But in innovation, you use that creativity to move it further so that people will really benefit from our work. It's now looking into what we call human-centric design. The second misconception is that only a group of people should do innovation. No, we should not let just the one department to do that, and that's not us, so that's just do them. No, everyone is an innovator at the start. You shouldn't just let other people do it because they're already good at it. We are learning every day, and we should always improve our skills to always give out that innovation. Each and every one of us has different hugots in life, and we use that hugot. We use that sense of inspiration to solve the problems that are very dear to us? What is your passion? We are dependent on that. And what do you really want to do with your life, or not just your life, with your research and innovation? What is our direction? Each person will have a different point of view. And that's why we do not just put one place where we do innovation, not just the innovation department, not just the innovation center. No, it is everyone. All of us here can be innovators and can bring innovation. How do you find that? We'll talk about in the next slides. The third misconception is that innovation is all about big bang, disruption, always about the new tech, something very new, something that we haven't seen before in our whole lives, something like a very big nuclear explosion that surprises everyone. Doesn't have to be Airbnb that disrupts everything. Doesn't have to be Uber that disrupts everything. Doesn't have to be a Tesla or SpaceX. It starts with a change. It starts with what you can do with society, and bringing your expertise to change, making them happy, making them fulfilled on what do they need, what do they want, provided that you have that expertise of yours. How do you bring that change, that impact to them? That is innovation. Okay. So don't have these misconceptions in mind that innovation is just for them, not us. Innovation should be grand. No, or innovation is just creativity. No, we should really look into what we could really do in ourselves. Each and every one of us has the capability to create, to innovate, and bring change, even our small ways. Okay. So why do you do research? So you can leave your comments in the chat box, or let's talk about that later in the Q&A. Why do you research? Given all of I said so far, why do you research? Can you reflect on your motivations in doing research? Is it really something now for the sake of money, for the sake of publications? Or can we do something better in bringing about change to society? So that's something that is really something that we need to think about. As engineers, as scientists, as technologists, why do we really do research? Is it really for our benefit or for the benefit of our countrymen? Okay. All right, so let's proceed. I'll leave that question to you. Maybe you can answer it internally, reflect on it, and what will be our direction for research. So how do you really start a research? I could ask you, okay, normally we'll start a research. Okay, we start with the scientific method, right? We have a question, we hypothesize, we test it, and voila, we have a research. Or we saw something, we saw a good technology on Facebook. Wow, this is so great. It does automation like this. Or you saw some invention or some wacky technology on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram. Oh, this is nice. And you start to innovate from that. Okay, that's right. That's okay. But we are starting from technology. How do we really start a research if we are looking for innovation? If we really want to do impact, is you start by identifying who really needs it. Why is this important? We start with the hard question first. We do not just create the things that we research, then let just people take that. Okay, this is what I did. You better accept it. No, that's not how we do research. Our research is more of a gift. Innovation is a gift-giving tradition. Okay, it's not, something that I'll force upon you because this is what I did for 5 years, so accept that. No, that is not how we do innovation. Okay, it's like doing in business. Like the customer is always right. In this case, the customer is our basis, or the user is our basis. Why we are doing innovation? It's not they don't receive just the solution because we said so. We need to see what do they need. Okay. So we start with the problem first. The problems are all your foundations, your curiosities, or anything that would lead you to your discovery. This is usually what you see everywhere. I commonly ask my students here, what's the problem that grinds your gears? What is the main issue that you're really angry about right now? Is it traffic? Is it the government? Is it something that you have experienced every day? Is it something that is it the experience that you keep hitting your pinky while you're walking on your house and you hit that every time on the table? That's a problem. And that we could use that as the starting point of where we do innovation or where we do our research. Okay. So I know you guys are really technical. You know all of the techniques. You saw the problem. Okay, we could do that. Let's solve this. Let's make a robotic pinky. Something, yeah, but that's our view. And we are not the only ones who are going to use this. Remember, we are delivering a solution to the people, not to ourselves. You might like that, but would the people need that? So we need to really think better on how do we really impart the innovation to the people. We usually are, based on problems. So problem-based research, what we really know and love, we start our research with a specific problem or problem statement in mind. Okay, that's the usual way, right? But there's a better way. Yeah, but this is the usual way we do that, especially the engineering design process. You define the problem, you brainstorm, and so on and so forth. It's a cycle. Yeah, and given the cycle, we just usually confine ourselves with this. But innovation is usually sometimes breaking the rules a bit just to deliver what the people needs. It's not just really following a process, it's following what the people need. I'm stressing on this really hard. It's what the people need. It's not just following the right track, it's following what do they need. Okay. So this is something better. You drive yourself with a problem-driven research. You are building researches around a certain problem. It's not just, find a problem, make a research, done, period. Let's try to make it better. Let's make it passion. Let's make it a bit more passionate here. How about we create a lot of researches? Let's plan a long-term research basing or driven by a problem that's really impactful, a wicked problem, a complex problem, a problem that drives the gears of your community. That will actually yield you better results. For one problem or one continuous problem, you can give out a lot of things. It can be anything about robotics. It can be a component. It can be a continuous progress. But the core there, you are revolving in a problem that is very dear to you. So that is problem-driven research. Sometimes you call it transformative research. But in this case, let's drive ourselves. Let's drive the research with problems. Let's not just base it on one time only problem, then let's throw it away, find another problem, and voila, let's have more research. This is what we call a bit more sustainable, or what we call having a technology roadmap. And how do we really set the foundations of our long-term research? So that's it for the first part. Let's talk about how do you really find innovation. Just like I said, it's like finding how can we do impact. How do we really initiate or plan the way we would do impact to society? That's the big question in innovation. It's not what technology should we use. It's not how much do we need to spend. It's like, what do we want to do to help people out to bring about change? So that's a more different or a more philosophical level. How will you actually drive research? It's not just tech. It is motivational. It's actually more romantic. Okay? If you're a fan of romance, finding innovation is just like falling in love. Okay? As I always say to my students, finding innovation, bringing innovation is like giving a gift. Okay? And we'll talk about giving gifts later on. So when you're trying to find the best fit of your research, you usually have these types of questions. Is it new? Do people want it? Can we do it? And do we really want to do it? That's novelty, desirability, feasibility, and motivation. Now, we usually don't find all of them, right? Let's be honest. We don't really find all of them because one, maybe we're running out of time, or two, we are required to do so. But if you really want to do a passion project, you want to do, your point of view of innovation, just start with this. Usually start with motivation. You start with yourself, just like we usually hear. When you start to love something, you start with yourself. Find something that you really love, something that grinds your gears. What is your passion? What's your hugot? What drives you crazy or mad every day? Not literally. What is your problem that you see that it's also a problem with other people that you are really passionate about? Then we look outwards. Do they really want that? That's desirability. Do people want that? Let's validate whether our feelings are right. Ask the question. Ask people, do you love the things that I love as well? Do you have the same problems that is something like this? Is my idea right? I'm just going to confirm. Is this your problem as well? These are now looking at what we call personas. Looking at customers, the possible users of our technology. Who are really going to benefit the things that we're going to build? Are we just inventing things just for the sake of fun? Or can it be better that can we make it fun at the same time we are helping other people out? So try to think about that. Then we move to the more technical side, which is novelty and feasibility. Novelty, I think you're familiar with this. Review of related literature, okay, or your RRL. If we find something similar, what do we do? Do we scrap that? No. This is one mindset that most students, or actually even tenured researchers, often make mistakes. Is that if we find something similar to the research we're doing, we scrap it. Yeah, I think that's most of the times that happens. So what should we really do? If there's a novelty, if it's not novel, we could, not scrap our research because we already invested some time about that. What if we could find, how could we be new from them? How could we be differentiated to what they're doing from us? Instead of revising everything, scrapping everything, throwing them out of the garbage, back to the drawing board, back to zero. What if you try to push forward in finding how could you do it better than them? That is now looking at novelty. Novelty doesn't mean completely different than you. It doesn't have to be very unique. Just have to have incremental change that improves what did the previous work did. Novelty doesn't tell you that you do not have novelty, therefore change your topic. Changing your topic doesn't mean scrapping it. Changing it can be modifying it, making it better on how it would seem that it is an improvement to that invention or topic, but provided that you are giving that proper solution to the people that is due, that you are still putting those people in mind, the problem in mind, and your desire to help those people. Again, it's not necessary that you should scrap your ideas. You can find in those areas, and we're going to talk about that later. Then in feasibility, I think this is, and I don't have to discuss this. We are innately, oriented about the feasibility. Can you do it? But there are times that, especially for students, that we are too optimistic on the problem or the idea that we wish to do, that we are underestimating the depth of the topic. Okay. You might be too excited now with your motivation, but let's try to limit that. Again, it's problem driven. You don't have to do everything at once. You can do it step by step, incrementally, until we reach our goal. We do not have to do a big bang. Again, like I said earlier, innovations are not about big bangs. It's about impact. So if you can do the minimal or the minimal viable products, the minimal effort, but with the maximum impact, that is better. And we can move forward every time so that we can improve that research. Okay? So again, doesn't have to be one research, one problem. It can be one problem, a lot of researches. It can be a one to many. We can stage the development. That's actually the idea. How do we actually do product development, right? We stage that. We stage that so that we can have better products in the future. If we bring everything right now, we do not have the sense of fulfillment for the customers. We don't. It doesn't seem that we have something to improve, and therefore it might die out because we're not keeping them in the loop of excitement. At least we could start from somewhere, and we can improve on that. I think that's better. You'll have more researches. You will not have a hard time in finding new inspirations. You have that passion project, and that would lead later on what we call patent portfolios if you're aiming to be a Filipino inventor. Now, for personas or desirability, we look at personas. Who are they? Personas are the people, the ideal people that will benefit from your project or your product or your research. Who are they? Now, if you cannot find a persona of your research, then we have a problem. I mean, the problem might be you do not have a clear problem in mind. We need to have specific people that will actually benefit from your solution. If this is not a problem by any people or maybe any entity, then why are you doing this? That's a good question. Why are you even doing this if no one will benefit from that, right? So we need to know who are the people concerned with your problem. Okay. So for example, if we would create an innovation about agriculture or about traffic regulation, for whom are we innovating? Are we innovating for the farmers? Are we innovating for the drivers? Or are we innovating for MMDA or the local government units or the street sweepers? It depends on what we are trying to solve and who are really the most impacted at those problems. So those are your personas. Okay. Who are they? What are their pains? What are their gains? How can we or how might we help them? Or how can we make them happy? How can we solve their needs? We have several ways to do that. But how do we really find your personas? You usually look into the problem. Who are the most impacted? Ask them, how are you? Can you tell me about the time that you had a problem about this? Can you talk about what are your goals with this activity or your job? Are you happy with your job? What makes you happy about that? Those are some of the questions that we ask about them to understand really. Because the goal here of personas is not just knowing who they are, it's knowing about their problem. That is now leading us to empathy. Okay? And this is empathy. We want to know what matters to them. What do they think, feel, see, do, and even hear? We need to know them better. Knowing them qualitatively, not just quantitatively, asking about a lot of people, asking 1,000 people, what do you think about this problem? No. We can go more intimate than this. This is now looking to design thinking. What do those people really need? What do they think about that problem? What do they see? What do they experience? What do they do every day? What are their goals? What are their fears on what could happen on a specific topic, on that problem? So this is very important. We're trying to establish empathy here. We're trying to understand what are their really needs? What are their true needs? Not just what we perceive to be their needs, because again, we're not the ones most likely that we're not the ones experiencing the problem. So we need to ask them, what do they need? And this is the analogy that I'm telling you is giving a gift. If you are going to give a gift, what do you usually do? You ask them, right? What do you want? Would you like this if I would give you something like that? Or you try to empathize with them. You try to put yourself into their shoes when you're trying to pick a good gift and you go out to SM or somewhere. or look, you scroll into Shopee, there's another. You stop and think, if I were this person, would I like this? Same thing with innovation. If I were this person, would I like that? And what is the best way to understand that is ask them directly. Do not just assume. If again, we're looking at the scientific method, do we stop at assumptions? No, we test that idea. We test your hypothesis whether they like the product or like the problem or not with the actual customers. And from there, we could find very good insights. We could find what do they love, what do they need. Maybe the problem that you're thinking is not really the problem that they are thinking. Maybe there's more to it. We find that not just in ourselves, we find that with the people who are actually experiencing the problem, which are our personas. I'd like to introduce to you the topic of design thinking. That is where this is all rooting in. So if you are interested in design thinking, how do we develop better personas? How do we develop better insights that we could use so that we could innovate better? I'm glad to introduce to you design thinking. This is the one thing, or actually one of the things, the more important things in design thinking. So if you're interested, there's a lot of courses online. I'm not going to take too much time on how to discuss in the discussion of design thinking. That will be another discussion. There are better experts than that. But let me just tell you that this is the basic thing that you need to establish is empathy. Understanding what others people feel. Okay, before you actually go into giving them feature solutions, let's do facial recognition. Let's do this. Let's have a feature that springs up in something like that. Let's use this kind of button. What if they don't like that, right? Ask them. We do not stop with hypothesizing all of the features that we're doing. We can actually test that idea. Research is a continuous testing, okay, especially in our field. If we want to deliver better solutions to people, we ask. We do not just assume. All of the good products out there ask you, is this what you want? Or how can you rate this feature? Okay, so that's something that you might need to look into as well. Okay, so let's do some desirability here. Another with personas is when I want to, so I can. This is usually how do we establish a value proposition on our product. For example, Instagram. Usually our personas would say, when I want to take a photograph with my phone, that is the situation. That is the status quo, the current problem. And the I want to here is, what are their goals? So they want to take a photograph with their phones because they want to edit it, or I want to able to edit it into a simple and easy manner. And the goal there, or the end goal, or the achievement, or the reward that we're looking at is, so I can share it with my friends. That's a simple proposition. That how could you innovate on Instagram? Let's have another one. I want to create a digital electronic solution. But, I want to code and implement it without in-depth background of electronics and robotics. So I can create better projects. That could be the value proposition of Arduino. And actually, I believe it's delivering it to you. You are enjoying the features of Arduino without not learning too deep on the firmware, too deep on what are digital logic circuits. Sometimes you even skip that. I hope you still remember that though. But even senior high school, not knowing all of the hard sciences behind that could perform innovation or create their solutions, right? And that's a very good value proposition for this kind of thing. And you can create that on your own as well. What's the problem? You find that in those people. When they talk about their problems, they would usually say this already. So what is your problem? So maybe, what are their current status? What do they do every day? That's when. What do they want to happen? Their expectations. I want to. Then what are the expected rewards? What is the big goal? So I can. So we can try to formulate something like this. There are more ways to do this, by the way. And that is, again, the topic of design thinking. This is just one. It's just the one I want to, so I can methods. But there are more. Okay. So we look at this as who are really our personas, but we can actually put them into three main categories: beneficiaries, personas, and the actual users. Okay. So these are subsets of each other. Let's try to look into them. Beneficiaries are generally people that will benefit from your research. Now, for those in the product development sectors, this could actually look at your TAM, or target addressable market. Okay. Those are people that would generally benefit your work. Personas are the people that are ideally experiencing the problem that you're trying to solve. So these are the people in your focus that will actually, really experience having your solution. Sometimes we call it the SOM, the serviceable. And then, or actually, no, yeah, no, it's a SAM. So that's just a SAM. And the users here are the people who are actually going to use that for the first time that you're going to deploy your product. So these things, they can be, segregated to each other. And all users are beneficiaries, all personas are beneficiaries, but not all beneficiaries are users or personas. Okay. So we can think about that. We can actually segregate these people first. We can do a top-bottom approach. Who are the main people that will benefit this? Identify who are the stakeholders. Out of them, who will be the most that will benefit from that? Those will be your personas. Now, you can subdivide your personas into a more reasonable scope, maybe geographically, demographically, maybe people aging from 18 to 21 will be your customers, or every person in Metro Manila. You can scope that into who will be the actual users. So segregating that will actually help us understand better which features should we actually put into our products, okay, into our commercialization, into the robotic research that we're going to create. How could we help that? How could we help them better? So this is now the aspect of personalization. Okay. Now let's look at novelty. Now you can find a lot of ways to, how could you find the similarities of our thing or of our researches? It could be, usually you might find it in scholastic works, so journals and publications. But there could be more than that could, be a basis for your novelty, or building upon your novelty, or hitting your novelty, is patent literature. What are the existing patents out there that are protected legally that, you have, that has the product? And we're going to talk about that later. And there's company products, the products that are out there. Not all company products do have patent literature, and not all company products do have scholarly work. So if we can find someone in the middle, that's great. But just finding in individual spheres of these is actually good. Finding novelty in all of them is great. Now, you can try to tabulate your differentiation. We're trying to look into novelty. So for example, you have your research, or you have your product in line. Then your features here would be, what could you possibly put there as a solution? Assumingly that you have already interviewed your personas, these are now the things that we already have, or you have already brainstormed about that. So for example, your research might include object detection, motion tracking, or stabilizers, maybe using gyroscopes. You can list that all. You can specify what technology you use. For example, object detection, I used what algorithm. Motion tracking, I used what algorithm and what setup. Stabilizer, what hardware did I use? Then maybe for patent A, you searched the patent for all the database, and you found a very similar research. But it did not include stabilizers, but included object detection and motion tracking. Then you found a similar product A that also has all of your features. But what's the differentiation? How did they implement that? What is the accuracy of them doing their object detection? How fast did they do that? Now we can find all of those differentiations. Now, if you can see what are the problems in patent A and product A, or maybe a journal B something, if you can find something wrong about them, that's already a basis for you to create novelty. Okay? That's where you could start building up your novelty, as well as providing the solution to the personas, right? So we got that. So that's novelty. Now, how do we define specifically patent literature? Now, in my office, do specialize in searching patent literature. Is we need to look at that. How do we find patent literature? Maybe especially in our times right now. But what are patents? A patent is an exclusive right granted for an invention, which is a product or a process that provides a general way or a general new way of doing something or offering a technical solution to a problem. Okay, that's a patent. Now, warning, if you are going to be selling a product and maybe in the Philippines also has a patent that is similar to you or actually very same to you, and you do not have a patent, they have the right to stop you from production because they have the exclusive right for the production of these things, right? So they have what we call a temporary monopoly over that technology. So that's a different advertisement that please try to push for patents if you are going to sell your research. Okay, that's one thing. So how could we find that? We have a lot of ways. There's Google Patents. We have Patent Scope. There's Espasnet or SpaceNet if you want. And there's IPOphil. All of these have their own databases that you could actually search. Now, to actually do that, that's beyond the scope of this talk. But if you want to know more, you can contact me afterwards. If you want to know about how to search for patent literatures here, and how could you utilize that in finding novelty in a possible research that you're going to do, right? So there's a lot of ways to do this. And you might be thinking that you are very new about this because you do not see anyone in the market. But there might be a patent already for that. Maybe not in the Philippines, maybe somewhere in China. Most probably it would be in China or in the US or Korea. Those are the top countries that are filing about technology, by the way. So we can find inspirations or build upon solutions from their research. And by the way, patents have full disclosure on how they create their products. It is fully disclosed. No, there might be trade secrets they're not telling, but most of the way and how they are going to create the research or create the product, as well as the functionalities, are stated in patent documents. Okay. So this is one thing. If you want to know more, again, maybe in the Q&A, or if you want to schedule another time, we can actually work on this. So this is the whole thing about design thinking, right? We always start with empathy. Then we define everything after we get all the data from our personas. Then we think of solutions. What could we actually do? Then we do prototyping, okay? Not necessarily to do a very big prototype. You can actually just prototype it using software. You can prototype it very easily with any trash that you can see on in your place. It's actually what we call rapid prototyping. If you're familiar, Google uses that to create products really fast. Doesn't have to develop it right away. It's just the minimum idea on how would you simulate the actual thing. So there's actually a lot of ways to do rapid prototyping. One of them is 3D printing, but there's actually an even more fun way to do that is simulating the possible outcome of your product by role playing. This is something I cannot instruct you to do right now because we're not personally here. But if this would be, a workshop face to face, I'd love to demonstrate to you how do we do rapid prototyping with role playing. That's actually more fun, especially for the students here. You can actually feel what could your personas feel if you're there using your product. Okay. Then we test. And take note that this is not a linear process. This is not one big process. This is iterative. For every idea, you can iterate very fast. You do not have to finish a whole deployment process just to test that. You can even do this in very small steps. If you're familiar with Agile, this is one application of that. How do we create ideas fast and test it fast so it can go into market fast? Okay. So yeah, well, I'm going to talk about Lean Startup anyway later. So that's the big idea. Again, if you want to know more design thinking, there's a lot of resources online. Maybe I can share to you later if you want. Now, I'd like to talk to you about your ikigai. So you might think that ikigai is just for professional growth, or if you have ever heard of it. Ikigai, by the way, is the reason for living in Japanese. But we look at the researchers, this ikigai. This is the reason why do you do research. Okay, your purpose in life, or the purpose of your life research. You need to look at the intersection in all of these. What the world needs, or what we call, what is the need of the people, also known as desirability. What are the things that you're good at? Can you actually do this? What are your expertise? Most likely the feasibility. What do you love? This is your motivation. What is the problem that you're passionate about? And what could you be paid for? This is viability, by the way. Is this something that the people would actually pay for? It can be a very great idea, but if it's not feasible to sell to the market, it's too expensive, then we cannot sell that. If you look at this is also a form, somehow a guide, not formula, a guide on how would you look at professional growth. But it's also something, how could you look at research? Something that you are passionate to do, something that you are called to do, something you're good at, and something that you can get money out of. That is the research ikigai. So you can, use this as a guide in guiding yourself in what do you really want to do. Now, what's the reason why we are looking at this? I'm very sure that you have at some times that point na, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not something I really want to do in a part of a research, right? There will come a point that it's not really what I want to do. It's something just assigned to me. And you lose motivation along the way. Your productivity suddenly goes downhill. And sometimes it goes to a point that you don't want to do the research at all because you do not believe in it anymore. That is the problem if we do not love the problem. Okay? If we do not have the motivation. So just to save you a lot of time and effort, find something that you really want to do. Something you're passionate to do about. Okay? Or find the passion in a problem. Okay? Learn empathy. Or actually practice empathy. Okay? So I want you to fall in love with a problem. Okay? Not, dwell in the problem, but fall in love with it and try to find a way to work around that problem to help the people who are in it. It's more inspirational and vocational now, right? But that's the point, because we're trying to give impact to people, right? Innovation. So how about let's design something that's really, what are the guides, okay? For those who are not really in the emotional side of things, if I did not get that, how could you specifically do that? Design for the SDGs, one way. That's one way. Keep these in mind. There are a lot of problems, and these are very true problems that we are experiencing. It's not just the first world, not just the third world, but these are general for everyone by 2030. There are problems that we could solve. And you need to look better. You need to look very closely. Do not close your mind because we are just doing robotics. We are immediately number 11. Okay? That could be, but not all the time. We can create innovations that promote gender equality. We can promote innovations in decreasing poverty. We can create innovations that will help reduce, zero hunger. We can reduce hunger issues. Do not confine yourselves with the idea because the technology is there. We need to confine ourselves to the technology. No. Work with the problem. And you as a professional already know how to solve this if you have a problem. The hardest part here is identifying the problem. What really drives your gears or grinds your gears. So that's one thing. Do not start with the technology in mind. Do not fixate yourself because this is a technology in trend. Start with the problem and the technology will follow. all of those technologies are just tools. Even I, as an AI advocate, I would not advise you to start with the AI in mind. Start with the problem, and AI will follow. AI is just a tool. All of these 4IR technologies are just tools. They are not religions that you will follow, religiously so that they will be the center of all researches. No. Start with the problem. Then everything will follow. You can do it because you're a professional. You can do it because this is you have been trained for this for many years now. And finding how to do that in a technology that's familiar to you, that will be easy. But finding a problem, whatever age you are or whatever experience you have, can be a problem. Can also be a challenge for everyone. Okay. So always keep that in mind. That start with a problem. We do not just give technology and expect people to accept that. We're just, for example, that is looking like, okay, I'm gonna buy a gift. Whatever I buy, just accept that, okay? So you are pushing your opinions, you are pushing your preference to other people. You're shoving it down to their throats, right? And expecting them to like that. You cannot expect that with the market. Okay, right? The people in the industry would know that the customer is really always right. If you try to give something that we just strongly believe ourselves, but not thinking about what the customer needs, that will become a flop product. You just wasted a lot of time and effort. Okay, we do not want to waste time and effort, especially professional students. Everyone's time is precious. Okay? So why not let's try to optimize that so that we will have better impact for you, for your community, right? So sustainability is right over in this middle spot right here. So if you want to aim for generally sustainability, aim for social, economic, and environmental. Okay. One of the things I'm also passionate about is how do we maintain this? You can design for economy. Okay. Design how could you create the financial feasibility or constraints of your product. Look at the return of investment of the product that you have. Maybe also solving problems about disruption employment. Consider what is the impact of your product to the people. Okay? This is more on the responsible innovation. Okay? We cannot just create a solution, then expect people to accept it and also accept the change. We have what we call a technology adoption curve, and not all people will accept that unless we show them the true benefits and it will not harm their current status quo. For example, I want to create an innovation that will clean the streets with no people autonomously. Okay. But what are the effects of that to the street sweepers that are struggling right now with COVID-19, trying to create or trying to establish a good finance support to their families? Are you going to try to disrupt that and making them jobless? Are you going to design such a product that will help people, or actually that will make people suffer more? So we need to think that when we are going to design for the research that we're going to do, as engineers, as technologists, as human beings, we should not just create out of what we just know. This is a bigger thing. We are looking at a gift that will affect people's lives, not just yours. Okay, it's them. It's for them, actually, not you. You're a creator, but the beneficiaries, they will be impacted greatly on whatever actions that you're going to do. And if ever it will have backed up by government, that will become more impactful. So what if that, if we made a street sweeper automation and it was mandated by the government and there's no plan on how to reallocate the street sweepers, what will they do? Can you think about their very challenges right now if that will happen? Okay, so that's another food for thought. Design for society. We need to think whether our innovations are looking into human ethics and morality, data ethics, sanitation, and even technical and operational feasibility. Can people actually use your product? Or the only person that could use your product is you. And If that's the case, that's too complex. People might not buy your product because it's too complex. It's not easy for people that the target market that you're trying to sell to actually use. So we need to think very carefully about that as well. Then there's environmental. Are you going to create green designs? Are you considering the carbon footprint of the product you're going to do? Are you creating more wastes after you create your product? Or these are now looking into ecological constraints and feasibility. Think about the environment. Think about your planet. You might be helping the people out, but you are in long term hurting the environment that they're living in. They're living in right now. So these are sustainable considerations. It's not just sustainability as a whole, something that you will pursue, but also sustainability of your project. Okay. And there's also designing for the fourth industrial revolution. Digitization, digitalization, digital transformation. Digitization, I think everyone is familiar, is just translating analog to digital. Okay? That's digitization. Or trying to automate, trying to make things appear in our digital space. For example, scanned documents are digitized documents from the physical ones. What you're hearing right now from me is my transmission over the internet, but my actual voice is not. My analog is not actually in there, but rather, it's already converted to digital and back to analog. Digitalization is transforming your processes into automation, using automation to transform your processes. The process of, for example, the zero paper or the paperless movement is a digitalization aspect. That is not digital transformation. Digital transformation is converting your whole organization or a whole community of their mindset to becoming digital, to accept technology, to accept the change that technology is here, and how do they adapt to that? Maybe not in community, maybe in your organization. How could you adapt to this? And that leads me to digital Darwinism. Digital Darwinism is survival of the fittest. You would notice what happened now in our pandemic. What happened to the businesses or the restaurants that you frequently have gone to ever since you have went to college? Did they close down? Or they actually survive? If they closed down, most likely they were not ready for digital transformation or digitalization. That is now the effect of digital Darwinism. It's survival of the fittest. If you cannot cope up with the new technologies, your business could run down a hill. But for those, for example, the shops that have adapted fast to Shopee, Lazada, GrabFood, or Food Panda, they survive. They are surviving right now through those deliveries. And that is now adapting to change. That is survival of the fittest still in our digital landscape. Okay? So always consider that as well. Okay. So it's not just also your product. Maybe if you're starting a company, you need to think about long term now. And how could you really survive in a digital space? This is part 3, by the way, evaluating innovation. How do we look at our innovations? So we have what we call technology readiness level. So we usually measure these in our products or whenever we are going to evaluate technologies. How mature are they in terms of their technology? So for us, in the incubator, we look at incubatees or possible incubatees on what level are they right now. So TRL 0 or technology readiness level, TRL 0 is just an idea. TRL 1 is they're currently on a basic research, maybe just a market research or a feasibility study. TRL 2 is technology formulation. They're now trying to create the methodology of their work. There's already an idea in mind, okay, but it's still formulating. You're still working on the prototype. 3 is it's in an applied research stage. You are researching about it. We're looking at experimental results right now. It might still be existing in a lab. There's TRL 4, ugly prototype. It doesn't necessarily mean not aesthetic, guys. I'm not saying that your prototypes are ugly. or if you think that your prototype is ugly, it's not. Sometimes it would not fall in four. Maybe it's a five already. Aesthetic is not the basis here, but rather ugly prototypes are prototypes that are not yet ready for large scales. Maybe just a proof of concept. Okay, those are your ugly prototypes. Okay, it doesn't mean ugly as in pangit. It's ugly as in not yet ready for a large scale of market. A large prototype is ready for deployment. Most probably, they are already past the alpha or beta tests. Open water, they are already, most likely these are in beta to gamma tests. You are ready maybe in your first deployment or your version 0 on Play Store it will be an app, or it's already being tested by a certain community. A demonstration system is something that could be used already in large scale in that community. For example, it will be a whole farm right now, or it's already used by a lot of people. Maybe it will be a version 1. Okay. Version 8 is where we start to solve manufacturing issues or sometimes deployment issues or maintenance. So these are, looking into version 1.1, version 2 already, and 9 is going full commercial. It's already there. You are now getting income. Okay, that's full commercial. So that's just technology. When you are going to sell these products to maybe a company or maybe into an investor, they usually look into investment readiness as well. What is the level of your product in terms of your business or its commercialization? Just like our topic. We're now looking at also the investment readiness of your product is what we call IRL. Not in real life, it's investment readiness level. So IRL 1 is first pass business model. So you have an idea on how would you sell your product. Okay? For example, it would be if it would be for example an irrigation system. How would you actually sell that? You have identified already your market. You have identified how would they buy it. If you have that initial idea, that's IRL 1. Now, IRL 2 is already the market size and the competition. So you have done a market study. You have done market segmentation. You identified who are your markets in terms of geography, demographics, psychographics, and the behavioral aspect. And you have identified who are the people that you might be competing with. For example, if you're going to create self-driving cars, of course, your competitor is Tesla. Your competitor would also be Uber. Your competitor could also be all of the other car manufacturing companies. So you need to know who are your opponents here. IRL 3 is the problem solution fit. You have identified that the users actually need this. That's actually what we call idea testing, wherein we actually ask the users, identified users, that do they need this problem? Or this is something that is evident to them. Okay. IRL 4 is what we call prototype or the MVP, not the most valuable player, but the minimum viable product. Again, that's the minimum viable product. So what is a minimum viable product? A minimum viable product is a device or anything that you have been creating with respect to the problem or the solution that you're going to create. And it is the minimum effort, but with the maximum value to be presented to the customers. Now, it doesn't necessarily be an actual prototype. For example, if it would be an app, for example, MVP to that could actually be just a demonstration. Even it does actually sometimes it doesn't have to be true, but it is something that it is expected, and you are going to deliver that anyway. For example, Dropbox. Dropbox had their MVP was actually very cool. They did a video that they're doing what could people actually do with Dropbox that that will make them have the idea that this is the idea. How do you drop items to the box and store it in a cloud storage? So it is a minimum presentation. But note that they did not develop anything yet. It was just a video presentation or just a video edited process. Now you might think that's false advertising. No, because you're not selling anything. You're just letting people see that this is something that you could do. And this is possibly that you're pledging to do. Now, if people would like that, for example, you did that in social media, if there are a lot of shares and likes, that's one metric. Or a lot of people try to subscribe and to wait for their order for this kind of product, that's actually a metric on looking at the viability of your product, that people would like to buy that. Now you just need to say to them that this will be released in some day. Okay? You're not going to disclose that you're not creating it yet, but this will be released on some date. Okay? And you will be reserved for that. Okay? Because now you have the idea of who will be the consumers. That you have an idea on what is the market volume that people would like to buy that. Okay? There are a lot of ways. I'm going to discuss that later. Don't worry. The product market fit is already testing whether the market is buying this. Okay? They have an idea on how much they're going to pay for you. You have an idea on how they are going to pay for you, and how are you going to deliver it to them. That is now the product market fit. You're now looking into the desirability, the viability, and the feasibility of your product. You can create it, people would like to buy it, and people need it. That's the product market fit. Okay. In IRL 6, this is now the validated revenue model. This is now where you are earning money. Okay. That means that your business model that you have created in IRL 1 is already validated. You are now earning money. You might be earning for, ads, but ads is not the only thing that you could earn. Maybe you're earning through subscriptions. You can actually look at that as well. Next would be the second prototype. This is now the prototype where you have already fixed all of the issues and have already aligned it with the needs of the customers on the second try after validating everything. Validated market is already, you have a stable income of your market. Okay? And validated metrics is that you already have the idea that this is improving according to several years already. So that is IRL 9. So we can actually map them out like this. So you can try to rate yourself. Where are you right now? Okay. And you might find that, what is your readiness? So if you have a high RRL or TRL, you're ready to invest. The minimum that we're asking actually usually to support inventions or support technologies is, it doesn't matter actually in the TRL here. But for those who are wanting to get investors already, you should have at least an TRL 4 to TRL 5 and an IRL of at least 3 to 4. This is actually by the requirements of the OST. So they are looking at those for incubation or for those that could be invested at an early stage, or what we call the young startups. So looking at having a problem solution fit, you have identified your need, or you have already developed a MVP somewhere there. And you have, in your terms of technology, you have an ugly prototype or a large prototype ready for scale. Okay. So if you have those already, you actually are now ready for commercialization. But there's another thing that you need to look at, which is intellectual property, which is in the next part. So the viability, I was talking about this earlier. How do we look at the MVP? So MVPs could even, work with simple time-bound experiments, or it can even be interviews. But the preferred ways actually are these. So there's what we call the concierge MVP, wherein you do not develop anything yet, but you are mimicking the service to the people. So for example, you are providing a shoe delivery concept, okay? So a concierge there would be, most likely you are still doing the manual delivery to them, but the automation of the orders are automated by people at the back end. But if people would like that kind of service, not pertaining yet to the performance, you would actually try to identify if that would be a click, if people would like that idea of the service. Again, we're looking at the service, not the optimization of the codes, okay? The Wizard of Oz is a showcase of features, but not having a product at all. Same thing like I said with Dropbox. So you can create a landing page, you can create your social media, create a video demonstration, maybe a 3D demonstration, a 3D video, or a TikTok maybe if you want, that shows the possible features of the product. Now, if people would like that, they would like to order this, they see that this is good. You have good feedback. That's actually showing MVP. That's showing already the viability of your product without actually inventing everything. Okay, you do not have to invent the whole product just to identify viability. Again, these are legal ways. Do not lambast me with this, because these are actually techniques used by Silicon Valley. I know this is something something that is not yet very common for us here, but this is already practiced and these are proven. You can actually use this. You can have combinations actually. So I know it's a bit weird, and I know it's kind of not in our culture, but let me just introduce this to you first. And lastly is smoke test. The smoke test is just a check on the interest of customers through advertisement or generally landing pages. Again, you can mix this with Wizard of Oz. This could be just a picture of a product, not really a video of a demonstration, or it could be also a check on the search statuses, or how much searches do people search about these problems or these kinds of products. So those are smoke testing, checking at Google Ads, maybe something like that. So those are some of the MVPs. We have a lot more, by the way. If you want to learn more, this is more on product development already. If you want to know, we really there's a lot of courses online that you can like to try, and they actually show this. If you want to know more as well, ask me maybe after if you want to try out some of these. Okay, let's talk about the other thing beside TRL and IRL, which is intellectual property. Not just in IT, but generally in whole commercializations. So we can do 6, okay? There could be more, but we can do 6 at least for this. Or maybe somehow an average of 6. We can do copyrights, we can do patents, utility models, industrial designs, trademarks, and trade secrets. You can protect all aspects of your research or your product with these. It's not just choose one, then scrap all. You can apply multiple. You can have a copyright, a patent, a utility model, a trade secret, industrial design, or even a trademark at that. Okay? So you can apply those in every part. So we can try to look at this closer in the next slides. So first is copyright. So you might think copyright is only for books, right? Or for papers. No, not just your publications. Your programming codes can be copyrighted. For those who are studying law here or those who are practicing intellectual property, they will agree. You can copyright codes. You can even copyright databases of your collected data as long as they are unique. So you can protect your documents, lab notes, codes, all of those can be protected as part of your portfolio as a company, right? Okay. So only requirement here is you must be original. Okay, it must be original. It's not plagiarized from someone else or infringed from someone else. Now you might be asking, how about code? How can it be original if you just copy paste that? There is what we call citations, and citation at codes are also considered, can be done. Okay, you can cite citations there. Also mentioning the license on where did you get that, and identifying who is the author of that code, unless it's already in the public domain. So that's a topic of IP. But anyway, I'm just going to give you a brief idea on that. Trademark, of course. If you have a brand, it doesn't have to be a logo, by the way. You can protect your brand. It can be a motto, it can be your slogan, it can even be sound, even smell. You can trademark a smell in the US, by the way. But in the Philippines, most commonly, we trademark logos, we trademark your mottos, you trademark your slogans. Those can be trademarks. Okay? So here, if you already have a logo for your product or your company, you can protect that already. Okay? And you can ask maybe an IP lawyer or your ITSO if you have in your school. They can actually help that, or even in patent law firms. They can help you with that. Industrial design. Now, if you are more of a UI and UX type of person, you create dashboards, you create great GUI, you can actually make protections out of that, not just copyright, but also as an industrial design. They have 5 years of protection for your design, by the way, and that actually can give you a lot of leverages in selling your product. it is actually what we call IP valuation. You can actually include this with the pricing of your product. So we're not going to discuss that about today, but having intellectual property could actually help you add value or adjust the price of your prototype or your product. Okay, so you can use that as well. You need to add that to your cost, to your pricing. Okay, so next would be, of course, the patent. Now, patent, it doesn't have to be just for extreme inventions. You just need to be new or unique, need to be inventive, and it has to be useful, or what we call industrial applicability. Okay, so when you have an invention, a pure invention here, a patent invention, you can be protected for 20 years. Okay, 20 years, and you have monopoly over that product or over that technology. You can see if other people will produce the same kind of product as you, and you see that in your claims or your scope of protection is the same as them, you can tell them to stop, or they would need to pay you to continue their production. It's actually what we call licensing. Okay, so take note, you must be new, inventive, and useful. I'm not going to discuss too much deeply on patents here. That is reserved for a different type of discussion. But if you want to apply, you may ask your patent lawyers, your patent law firms, or if you have an ITSO at your school or Innovation and Technology Support Office. Or you can even directly go to IPO Phil, or the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, for them to guide you. Okay. Then you can also file a patent as a utility model. So what if you do not have inventiveness, or what we call the quirkiness of the invention? So you can apply for a utility model that is for 7 years. Okay. Let me just note that applying for a patent invention might even take 5 years of application. So if your technology would be, if you want to produce that, right now, and you want to reduce cost, then patent inventions might not be your choice unless you are aiming for 20 years really of protection. But you can actually just follow utility models in which, technologies such in our cases are fast moving, right? So this is very important, that if you want to file fast, and you are going to change it anyway in a few years, maybe utility model is for you. It just have to be unique and useful. Okay, or what we have, it should have novelty, and it should have industrial applicability. Okay. Now, given this image, this just very image here, this has more than 5 patents already. And just for having Facebook has around 12,706 patents. This was last month. Of all of their features. This phone in itself has maybe around thousands of patents as well. And just a simple technology could have a lot of patents covering that. For example, synchronizing conversion of threads corresponding to a common content item. For short, these are trying to recommend the sales or the advertisements based on the messages that you do on Facebook. The recommender system, for short. The system and methods for sharing content. Even the share button is patented. The functions of the share button is patented. Machine translation based on corrections. There's no translation here, but you can actually find if there are C translations in the post, that's patented. Three-dimensional depth mapping using dynamic structured light. This is Oculus. Okay, this is Oculus. This is on the 3 dimensions. System and methods of for image recognition, normalization, calibration. This is on the filters of your Facebook. Right. So all of those features could actually be patented. Okay. So you can actually do that if you want to increase your capability of having better prices or having better leverage in the business landscape. Having patents, that is a great deal. There's also copyleft. Now, a lot of you might laugh. There's copyright, there's copyleft. But yeah, there's true. There is copyleft. So copyleft is kind of the inverse of copyright, wherein copyright is a bit more restrictive, okay? That means people cannot copy from us. While copyleft tells you to be also restrictive, but also it's telling you that you should share, Okay, you should share your work. You cannot keep your work. You should not restrict other people. A big example of this is Linux. Okay, this is a very copyleft, a very hard copyleft, a strong copyleft protection. So it grants the people, or grants the invention, not really invention, grants the work to be freely distributed. You can modify it, but sometimes you need to declare the modification as well. Now, where do we see this? This is mostly common with open source. So be careful on what you get on GitHub. Okay, you need to look at the licenses that you're getting. Now, for given that your license is a permissive license, or actually no, let's go for the strong copyleft license. That means, take note of the note here, copyleft on all redistributed work, including new derivative and composed work incorporating the work. That means whatever modifications of the code that you have done, you should share it online to all people to see for free. Now, if you're trying to commercialize something, this is very dangerous for you. Okay? Because you are losing probably a very important core feature of your product that you should not share to the public. Now they could actually replicate that and not even buy your product at all. Right? So that is the worst case. Now you need to look out whether what license that you have that you're getting. Now for those in the industry, this is very crucial. Okay? I did some IP auditing with some people already that there are cases that they were almost going to go to market, but they have a GPL license or a EUPL license that would most probably prompt them to display that. Now, what we did is I asked them to redo the parts of the code that will not go under the copyleft. So that will be using another implementation. That's very crucial. So if you are planning to earn something like this, and that is a very key feature, please take note of your copyleft license. There are weak copyleft, which is LGPL, MPL. Okay, so these are only on the original works, but not on the extensions of the composed works. Okay, and there's permissive. This is actually the best one that we could find. BSD, MIT, and Apache. Most researches on AI are in MIT. Most educational codes are in Apache. And some of the proprietary software, for example, libraries of Microsoft are in BSD. So that means they are permissive. That means your works could be not distributed to the public. You're not required to do so. So you need to be very careful about that, guys. Students and also industry practitioners, researchers. So if you don't want your code to be publicly displayed, okay, you need to check which license that you are getting from. I'm not saying that do not get from free and open source, rather that need to check very carefully what licenses are you taking. Okay, so that will actually that will hurt the business venture in the later parts. Okay, so let's go to the last part, the actual commercialization. How do we sell this? Okay, so how can you get money? So one is licensing agreements. If you have intellectual property, you can license out, okay? You're going to license out your intellectual property so that other people could use that. And what you get most likely will be royalties. So that means for every production or for every use of them, you get a percentage of that sales. So that is actually a good strategy. That is now licensing agreement. So you can use that for copyrights, you can use that for trademarks, you can use that for patents or utility models as well, even industrial designs. So just having those could help you create licenses that you can actually, let people, buy your license to operate. Okay. There's also joint ventures. If you have a partner, you can start a business out of that. If you are a team of your researchers, you can start a startup. Now, what's the difference between a startup and a spin-off? Startups are generally companies that are working on innovative technologies or innovative business models, and spin-offs are startups that are products of an university. Okay, So for example, I remember we have Batangas State here. I believe Batangas Batsu has their TBI. So for example, if you are going to create your innovation or your research there, then you can create a team, then do a startup. Then if the university would fund you or your technology is owned by the university, then you are a spin-off of Batsu. So for example, okay. So that's one example. If you want to be a startup coming from a university research, most likely you are going to be a spin-off. Then of course there's outright sale. So you're just going to sell the whole technology, not just technology. By the way, you are selling intellectual property as well. Okay. Be reminded that you are also that actually has cost. The more intellectual property that you have, the more valuable your research is. Okay. So please keep in mind that you can do that. So computation of this is beyond this beyond this talk anyway. But that's the idea. You can actually sell them using these methods. Now, specifically, if you're going to be a joint venture or a startup, how can you sell this? But first, let's do a review of the lean startup. Lean startup is you always start building. You have small experiments, measure them using maybe an MVP, always have metrics, then learn. Now, if ever your invention or your product is not good with the market, you either pivot or you persevere. Okay. So when you do pivoting, that means you try to move around you try to modify your work, look into a new perspective to change your work. Now, if persevere, that means you are going to continue because probably the metrics are right. It's following your expectations. You just continue this cycle. This is now the topic, or this is now the consideration for building continuous development for your products. Okay. So you need to look at this as well. Continuous development. You do not stop with learn. You always put that into the cycle. This is now again the lean methodology. So this is more to look at that further. You start with an idea. You have an hypothesis. Perform experimentation. Now, if that experimentation yields some metrics or results, if it's good, you persevere. If it's bad, you pivot. You do not exterminate yourself. Always look into a bright side or find the brighter side in innovation. Maybe find a new light in that problem, or find a new problem to fall in love with, or find a new implementation to solve that problem. Always pivot. Pivot is always the term here in the startup industry. If you are going to be a startup, if things do not go your way, you do not stop. You pivot. Either you pivot or you persevere. Now, the only time that you will be you will stop there, or what we call exterminate yourselves, is when you become bankrupt. Okay, as long as you have the will. Sometimes if you don't have the money, but you have the will, you can still pivot and find ways to earn money. Okay, and start just really to push your innovation. Really love the things that you're doing. Okay. Then how could we use business models? I'm going to show you very briefly. Okay. How could we sell things specifically? Subscription. People could get a subscription of your work. For example, Netflix, Adobe. So for a specific duration of time, they will pay it for a certain period, and they will give you, and you will give them the services of your product. Most likely these are in IT. So this could also be in services on shops, of course, premium services. Okay. Freemium, as I'm going to say, is you are offering a basic service at first, but you can also pay if the customers will pay you further. You can have better. You can give them better features. For example, of course, Spotify. So if you got Spotify Premium, they could actually give you a better playlist, right? Or you can even you do not have ads. Okay. So those are ways of you can commercialize your works. You can actually, this is not just sometimes in the virtual space. You can actually put this into the physical space as well. There are free services. Now, if you have a shop, or you have for example, a membership type of business model, you can offer freemium. For example, you have free support for for your hardware. You can free support for their hardware development. But for premiums, so you have maybe more support. They have the priority in shipping, something like that. There's also customer data monetization. Okay, so this is for the projects that do sensor nodes. So if you are a project focusing on, for example, harvesting data, maybe for volcanic activities, maybe the wind at coastlines, or the solar irradiation for a specific place, those are data sources. Like as the 4IR states, data is the new oil. And if you can sell that, you're rich. Now, if you are working in those kinds of innovations, collect the data properly, clean them properly, sell them to the people. So you're monetizing that data. Okay? You're monetizing the data that you're collecting from the environment that you're processing using your sensors, and other people will benefit from that. Sometimes it's not just a company. If you're familiar, if you're doing very extensive research, for example, that are based on machine learning, or that you're doing market research, you sometimes need to pay for statistics, or sometimes you need to pay for data sets, right? That's actually a data monetization model. That means if once you collect your data, put it into a proper data set, you can put it as an API, put it into your server, and you can actually give them access to the data for a certain period of time, and they will need to pay a fee for that. And that's data monetization. I think this is one of the things that is very powerful, especially with data, but also the most scary if you're not working with environmental data. If you are working with people data, okay? So we have a lot of considerations. Of course, data privacy, right? So we need to be careful about that. So that's a very different topic. That's the topic of data governance on data monetization. So please be careful, okay? In this case, this is generally on customer data monetization. We need to be very wary, okay? So users get the free service, okay? And company sells the data to a partner. Then example, Facebook, Instagram. There are other ways as well, actually. There are a lot of other apps that you might be looking into as well. Okay. Sharing economy. Now, this is very complex, but also one of the most used right now and really has great business models. Is you are bringing social impact with your business model. Okay. So you have a platform, you have an owner. Originally, you have an owner and a seeker. Usually, the common problems here is that the seeker will always try to find services from an owner, and usually the problem is they're hard to find. For example, finding delivery, finding carpooling, finding services, for example, plumbing, services for laundry. So that is a problem of a seeker. An owner is most likely the business owner for a laundry shop, a delivery service, or an online shop, or even just like an example earlier, are food stores. Now, what the sharing economy does is that you are here, the platform, that's you. You are creating a platform to connect several owners to the seekers. You're allowing access to market. So where do you earn? Okay, you get renting fees from the owners, or these are service fees, and there's also service fees for the seekers. For example, why do you think that there are increased charges when you are going to deliver? So one of them is, of course, delivery fee, and another one, there are service fees or rental fees of using the platform. So these are charged for every purchase. Okay? That's how would sharing economies would work. For example, Grab, Food Panda, Airbnb, and Uber has these business models. Okay? So that's it for the business model. So I did talk about earlier about the product adoption curve. Like, if you are going to bring your product to the market, there is always a gap. This is the chasm. So if you are going to try to sell your product, the first line of people that are accepting your product or going to buy your product are most likely the innovators or those who are very into new technologies, the techies or the tech gurus. Okay. Then we have the early adopters. Most likely, these are the followers of the innovators. So most likely, they could be universities. These could be their family and friends, or those who are easily accepted, or they can easily accept the technology. Most likely, the Gen Zs, probably. And the chasm here is the very crucial part. If we fail to jump this chasm, we die. It's do or die. It's either you pivot or you die now. Okay. Persevere is going to be a hard option if you cannot cross the chasm. Now, how could we bridge the chasm? This is why we need to do persona-driven research. If we do not know how to get the customers' yes, this early majority's yes, we could not anticipate the chasm. So that's why we do market research. That's why we do MVPs to make sure that we can bridge the chasm as easy as possible. Because we are doing the MVP not for these guys, but for the majority. So we're trying to preemptively try to bridge the chasm before we actually deploy our products. Okay. Then lastly, I'd like to show you the Ansoff matrix. Okay. So this is where you would like to align yourself if you are which market that you're going to compete with. Okay. So if your product is already existing or it's an innovation of an existing product and it's for already an existing market, what your strategy should be is market penetration. Invest your time and efforts maybe in advertising. And how would you increase the value proposition of your work as something that would be needed by the people? What is your differentiation now? Probably in the business model. If your product is existing, but you are going to enter a new market, maybe for our industry practitioners here, you're going to do market development. You need to understand the new market you are in. You need to perform a new persona analysis that you could know how to, get their yes, get their, kung ano yung kiliti nila, di ba? You need to find how do they really work with the problem, right? So these markets have different needs. They have different psychographics. This is now the idea of why you need to do product research so that we will understand what are their specific needs. Now, if you are a new product and you're entering an existing market, okay, what you need to focus is product development, product differentiation. What is your difference with the existing products out there? Because you are competing with old established companies. If you're going to create a new self-driving car, what would be your proposition that it will be different from what people are using? If you are going to propose for example, a new kind of induction stove, what would be your difference with MRFlex, something like that? What is your unique proposition to the people? Again, sometimes it's not just technical, but also your business model. Could also be how would you perform customer relations? Now, if you're a new product in a new market, you need to be very prepared. Okay, you need to be very prepared because this is now your job as a startup. You're now performing disruption. That means you need to do a very intense diversification strategy. You need to look into who are the market and how could you deliver this market to them. So far, everything that we talked about is diversification. How do we bridge the gap and how do you find the novelty that you could bring to new markets with new products? So don't worry that this might be the most difficult part you might see, but just recall everything so far we talked about, and that is diversification. All of these are already existing practices. You can find this in any business management book. You can find this in any innovation book. You can even ask your manager about this. You can even ask maybe your College of Business Administration. They would know about this. But diversification is where innovation lies. The key word in diversification is innovation. And that was our talk today. So thank you. And if you'd like to connect, these are my contact details if you want to, talk about more about innovation. And if you have any questions, I think we will have our Q&A soon. And thank you. right? So, Gerald, I still here.
Okay, so yun. Thank you very much, Engineer Dylan Lopez, for that fun-filled and knowledge-filled webinar. So we are now going to proceed with our question and answer portion. For that, you may use the raise hand icon, and then when we call your name, you can unmute. Or if you're feeling shy, you can use the chat box feature and send your queries there. For the ones watching at the YouTube channel and Facebook Live, you may use the comment section for your queries. So let the questions fall. Here. So we have our first question from Adamson University.
Mhm.
If the target market and persona is the local government, is it better to sell the technology or license the technology to them?
It's usually in this case that the best case is always licensing. Always go for licensing first. Outright sale will be your last option if you do not have any more bullets to throw at the government. There's a lot of ways actually. This is a very complicated topic, but it's also fun. You can actually go for the regular licensing, which is, patent licensing, and you'll have an agreement for their implementation. And for every implementation, you get royalties. There is now another thing about digital technologies or IT that you could actually look into, maybe a long term. If you're familiar with public-private properties or PPP or public-private partnerships, this is also that also exists with digital economy or digital products. So you can look into BOT, BTO, all of those kinds of PPP methods, and trying to commercialize that. You can build, transfer, and let them operate, and somehow there will be payment. Or you could build, operate, you will operate first before you transfer to the government. That's another way. So, but the most basic way actually would be licensing, because if you sell your product, you are also selling the rights to produce all of these, and that will be just losing your right to have another type of deal. So that's actually looking into licenses for those taking up law here. There's the exclusive and non-exclusive licenses, right? So we want non-exclusive for us because we want to earn more. So if you sell this right away, we're losing a lot of chance to earn money. Okay, so that's my suggestion as part of the Innovation to Technology Support Office of Adamson, go for licensing rather than outright sale. That will be your last option. That will be the last stand. But if you can, make a startup.
So we have another question to sir, again from Adamson University. How can we validate our metrics?
First, we need to identify first the metrics. What are we going to observe? For example, are we looking at the performance of app usage? How many people are using our apps? So we first identify our key result areas. Okay, operational planning. What are the key result areas that we are looking into? Are we looking at the change of perspective? Are we looking at the what we call this, the acceptance of people, maybe in the adoption curve? Then we set the KPIs, the key performance indicators. So what would tell us that they are actually into this, maybe? Then after identifying the KPIs, what would be the exact numbers that we want? Okay, so that's something that we're going to look at. So that's how we validate our metrics. So we go back first on what are we trying to achieve, then to what we are, how can you measure the achievement, then what are the specific numbers for that achievement. So that's more of the looking at your operational plan in your innovation.
Okay, sir. So I think someone raised their hand. Mr. Sebastian Wee, you may unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Oh. I think Sebastian has mispressed.
Sorry. So we have a question from Kenneth P. Dazon, Quality Audit Research Design and Development. How do they evaluate new designs? Do they sell unproved and unchecked designs to their customers so that, in effect, their customers do the proving test free of charge?
I believe this is like going back to the unsoft matrix. It depends on where you are. So if you are looking at our diversification, we do this very fast. We are doing this, yes, free of charge. Customers do actually do that. Actually, they don't know they are auditing your product already. That's MVP. Now, that's the thing. I'm very wary that people might not accept right away of the idea of MVPs because they will not know that they are in already checking a product. Now, if it would be on an existing market already and an existing product, for IQA or the quality for quality audit, there are a lot of ways to do that. There's one way is focus group discussions. So we you usually pay for that. Okay, you pay for a focus group discussion. You get a third party. Let people maybe talk about their products, and you see the results. Take note that again, just like in any quality audit, you do not do that on your own, especially if you're having customers, because most likely that will tarnish your data. So we use a separate personnel for that, or separate party, and we should actually pay our customers if the product is already existing, okay? Because we can treat them already as our shareholders, right? But if it's going to be at the start before we actually deploy the product, the idea of this quality audit, or just actually generally an audit yet, is using the MVP. So that's the two sides of that. So if you want to do an audit for your product, so one of them is using the focus group for your customers. Another one would be surveys, of course. But if you want qualitative data, you might need to look at focus groups. So I answered your question. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from James Russell Padua from Adamson University.
Hi,
How
James.
do we predict the success of an idea or research to continue to become a business?
That's going back to the MVP. If you already identified the viability. So if your research is just a research from the laboratory and we don't know whether we should push or not, let's do a market research. Let's try to understand whether if the market would really need your research. That's why we usually do this before you do all of the research. So that's why we do market research, right? I know you know that, James. But for those who doesn't know that, we usually do that before we try to conceptualize. Actually, while we conceptualize, we need to identify whether the market needs that. Now, if you fail to do that at the start, that means that's not the end, by the way. So what we do is when the research is done, we can still perform our market validation. So we need to check for the desirability, whether they like the problem, and the next one, if they like if there is viability, we try to make an MVP now. Let's try to post a video about your product. If they like it, maybe that's good. We can now set the KRA and KPI for that, related to the previous question. Then we can find whether if that will be okay for market or not. The other topics here are actually feasibility study. That is just one. That's operational feasibility. We also have financial feasibility, whether your product is actually cost effective for production or manufacturing at that point. And we also have technical feasibility. Are the technology available for the actual development of this to the public? So we do those feasibility studies and also the market study. So yeah.
Okay. So next question is from James Luyon of Adamson University. If the group has decided to choose the path or startup path, how do we determine or compute for the startup costs?
All right. Thank you, James. So here's what you're going to do. We need to identify production cost first. So what will be the production cost? If you're going to develop an app, what will be the cost for services? For example, cloud computing. For example, AWS. If you're going to go for that, you have fees for cloud computing. There's also maybe subscription for software that you're using. Subscription, the price of the data that you have collected online. Maybe if you have tried to buy one. So that's the production cost. You have another one is overhead cost. How much did you cost? How much did you spend for developing your product? This would include your electricity and communication expenses. If you are traveling, you also put that. And we have a lot more actually. There's also IP valuation. What is the value of the intellectual property of your research? Now, if you have more of that, that will actually determine more of the cost of your actually not the, yeah, the up cost of your startup, because you are gonna pay recurrent fees for protection of your IP. So you need to plan that out. You look at your strategic plan actually. And further than that, it's not just production. You're going to look at advertising. You're going to look at promotions. You need to have those. And another key aspect is human resource. How much are you going to pay your people? Usually at the start of a startup, you only have your founders. So you don't necessarily think of the cost right yet. You're looking at what we call shares or equity. So you may think of a startup cost later on once you are going to hire people. So how much are you going to disseminate on that? So you need to determine that from your product and all of your costs. Now from that cost, you're now going to compute your prices and compute for your market volume. So computing for that market volume, that's a different topic. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. Anyway, we do have we have separate resources on that. So I hope I answered your question, James.
So another question is from Jasmine Padilla of Adamson University. Is using alternative or local materials for existing products abroad considered an innovation, or is it just being another one in the market?
It depends. If you're just using a product just for the sake of a different kind of product, then that is novel, but it's not that, it's not giving us much of a market advantage, unless if the change of material affects, for example, market impact or environmental impact or carbon footprint. It solves the problem of waste generation or maybe carbon footprint. So the change of that material should have a justification, whether it should be helpful or not for the market environment. So that's one. If you're just going to change a material just because, that might not be feasible, that might be not viable enough. So if you're going to change a material for a certain implementation, make sure it has impact. So that's we're looking back at innovation again. Right.
We have another question from Jean Borrejon of Adamson University. Hi sir, what is your opinion to researchers that are inspired by their projects but do not make much
of an impact? That's fine, as long as you are pushing for innovation. Impact is not measured on how much people you are going to address, but there is always impact to projects that you're passionate about. You just need to find where do you fit in that project, or where does your project fit with the market. And again, impact is not just about big boom or the big bang. It can be just an incremental push. Okay. If you have inspired, if your inspiration is in your project, there is surely an impact out of that. There is a reason why you love that project, and you can try to find the impact from that. Okay. So it's not a causality that impact leads to inspiration or inspiration leads to impact. Actually, it can be in other ways. It depends on actually you. If you really love your project, you can try to find an impact of that. That's why we can do market research.
So here we go. Next question is from Maria Tibon. What are the advantages and disadvantages of involving end users or customers and investors in the development of startup ideas? Is there a need for non-disclosure agreements or NDAs?
Okay, let's go first with the first question. Okay, what are the advantages of including your customers in the design? Okay, not actually the development, the design first. When we look at the design, if we ask the customers, we are looking at the persona, human-centric design. So we are now bridging that gap in the chasm for technology adoption. That's the big advantage. Disadvantage is be ready to accept opinions. Be ready to accept things that are against your opinions. I think I said this to my students before, but let me just say it to you that usually your opinions do not matter in product development, especially when you are looking into really purely on customer design. Sometimes our opinions will just skew away towards the bias. What we need are hard facts from the customers. Now, for the investor side, this could be a bit tricky. You need to choose your investors wisely. Sometimes the investors, if they are too hands-on, they might change the whole aspect of your vision. Always keep in mind, if you're a startup, we need to be very focused on what we are really driven to do. We do not want to create a big balcony out there just because someone asked us to do it. We want to build up a good, chandelier because we wanted it to be there, or our customers need that. So for the next part is, would there be NDAs? Now, it depends on which stage of the product you are developing. If it's just the design, you do not need an NDA because that's still just an idea. But if you are already on the product development stage, you need an NDA. You need to be very careful. You do not need to tell the customers how to develop the product. The customers just need to know how the product is working. Okay, how can they use it? You don't need to disclose to them that I use this kind of language, I use this kind of AI model. You don't have to tell that to them. But for the investors, yes, you need an NDA. Okay, so this is a 4-part question. But I hope I answered your question. This is a very crucial topic, by the way, is customer involvement and investor involvement. I believe, especially when you are in TRL4, you need to be very careful now. Yeah, so I hope I answered your question.
Okay, next question is from DCE2-2, Mr. Coronel. Is input process output or IPO model is still reliable research model to follow, or there are other research models that I should look for? It's for engineering research.
Yes, the IPO model is still very relevant. So because it actually guides you on what are the expectations. So there are other models you could try. Again, research is also creativity. You can try to fit a research based on what you believe to be done. You can insert, for example, a sustainability model if you're into sustainability. You can input a model based on other global metrics. Okay, or you can even follow designs for patent-based research. It depends upon you on what do you choose. But do not forget what is really your end goal. Always keep that in mind. Your IPO diagram is just a tool. What you need to look at better in a research model would be, how does it impact? Some of us actually think that the significance of the project does not mean anything much with documentation. That is a big lie. The significance is everything, or actually the very important part before we get to commercialization. If you do not establish the significance of a project, it's going to be pointless why you're even doing this. So we need to look at that as well. So walang tapon sa research, okay? All of those research parts are very important. But IPO, again, just to iterate, is still very relevant. But you can also add more models to make your research more validated, and you can be more guided to what you want to do.
Okay, our question is from John Brennan Tongkin of Adamson University. If the project would be funded by an organization, which party should file the patent? The researchers or the funders?
That's ownership. So it depends on how they are funded. Before you are funded, always ask for the memorandum of agreement, which should be a contract. Now, that contract should always stipulate how is the intellectual property split. Most likely, they will have ownership to that as well. Now, as for the filing, it should also be stated in the contract. If not, then you should talk about that. Okay, but the owner of the invention should be you guys, unless stated directly with the contract. Okay, so you need to work out with that if it's going to be a separate organization. So it's up. You need to really work upon that upon application. So if the contract stipulates that the product or the project that you are doing will be under a project of a company and you are somehow employed or outsourced to work on that, then the ownership will be theirs. If it would be a collaboration, then most likely you are that's a joint ownership. So they will be probably an applicant, okay, or you can be the applicant, or the university you are in is the applicant. But the inventors or the owners of the invention would be split into who are the developers and who did fund the research. So if you're a student, because Brandon is a student, you are still under the university. So if your research is university based or it's part of your requirements of the university, the applicant could be the university, and can be joint owned by the company or the organization you are working with. So that's a restriction if you're a student or you're doing research for the university. So the university still has a say on how would you actually sell or file your innovation as a patent.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is from Alan Mendoza. In startup involving manufacturing, which should be prioritized first? The market development or product development?
Mm-hmm. It depends on which are you venturing in. Are you going to, or is it an old market or an existing market? So if it will be, or it's a new product or a new product, if it's going to be a new product in an old market, focus on product development. So what is your differentiation? Because if your market is just the same, okay, in manufacturing, then you might need to find what's new in your product so that people will like it better. Now, if you are looking into the same product but a different market in mind, you need to do market development. So this is now because you're looking at what we call a horizontal expansion. Okay, that's horizontal expansion. You are using the same product for a different market line. So in that case, you just need to develop the market, but not your product. But if you are already in the other one in product development, that is vertical expansion. So you might be introducing a new product line to an existing market. So you need to build upon the product itself, not the market, because assuming you have already done that previously on the previous products. But again, do not disregard the market because markets are changing. So you just need to focus on that, but you need to still do the other as well. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
The next question is from James Padua of Adamson University. Given we already have a desired topic in mind, are there any factors we should consider in using technology such as existing, innovating, or creating a new one in order for our project or product to succeed?
Mm-hmm. So if you already have a topic in mind and you have already validated your personas, assuming that you have validated your personas, if not, please validate them first. For the technology, we need to look at your competition. Okay, who are the people that you might be going against with? Now, if their technology will be kind of state of the art, do not tackle for the state of the art. You can tackle the state of the art, but you need to focus in other things. You might need to focus on maybe on the product delivery or the feature delivery. So sometimes it might not be in the technology, depends on your competition or what is your novelty with the current competition that you have. So we need to look at that first before we actually say, how can we improve the features that we have? Okay. So those are some factors: competition, novelty, existing technology. Another one is of course budget. Okay. You might be looking at better innovations, but if you don't have the budget and you don't have the technical expertise to do that, that will be a big hindrance. That's a big risk for you. Okay. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay. We have a question from Christian Garcia of Adamson University. Hi, sir. What do you think should a startup group do in case they are having a hard time looking for possible investors? What path do you recommend for them?
I recommend you revisit your market. Usually that's the problem. Why people or why startups are not being accepted by investors is because you do not have a realistic market. Maybe the market you're targeting is too big, or the market that you're targeting is too narrow. Or because if it's too big, you're too ambitious, you have a lot of risk, and I don't want to risk my money to you. And if given that you don't have a proper plan. Another one is you do not your market is too small, then why should I even invest in your product if it's going to be a small time? It's not going to give me much of a return of investment. So another thing is you don't have a clear market. Your problem is not established. Okay. Another one is you have a competition that you do not show much of novelty. So you need to work on that. So there are actually a lot of ways why investors are not accepting you, or if you cannot find investors or they're not answering your calls, you need to work really on how you are, working on your solution, working on your problem. And maybe it's also the pitch. You have a very ugly pitch deck. Visuals are very important as well. If your presentation is somehow sloppy, then it really shows your quality of work as well. If you do not put your effort, even a very short presentation slide, why should I even invest if you are not going to put 100% in actual product development? So that's another thing. If all of them are checked, but if you're just really scared on getting an investor, what you do is you get exposure. Maybe from your school, join competitions, join hackathons, maybe join pitching competitions, join networking events, not Uno, by the way. The networking events such as you would try to explain your product to a lot of people, get much exposure as you want. Provided that you have a good pitch, you have a good market, you have a reasonable market, you have good technology, I assume you believe you do, and you know what you're going to ask. You're not just going to you're not going to approach investors and say, "This is my technology." Now what? What are you going to ask me? It's just the same as you're going to ask baon from your parents. What is your value proposition? Why do you need baon? What do you need? Do you need marketing assistance? Do you need intellectual property assistance? Do you need funding assistance? Do you need office space? So you need to consider those as well. You might be lacking information on what are you asking from them. So those are a lot of ways. Asking for investors are very tricky. So you need to consider that as well.
Okay, I guess the last question would be, can we have a copy of your learning materials or your resource material from?
Sure. I'm just gonna share this via link. I'll just share this a viewable document to you. So I'll just send it maybe to the organizing committee.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So since there are no more questions, thank you very much, Engineer Lopez, for sharing your insights and knowledge regarding our topic for today. And with that, we want to award you this certificate of appreciation. This certificate of appreciation is given to Engineer Dylan Josh Lopez in grateful recognition for sharing his knowledge and expertise as guest speaker during the conduct of Commercializing Robotics Research Webinar Series 5 with the theme Breakthrough Innovation, Creativity, and Resilience by Embracing Change and Transformation Through Research, given this 18th day of September 2021 at Manila, Philippines via online media. Signed by Engineer Yolanda D. Austria, the chairperson of Computer Engineering Department of Adamson University and a board member of MRSP NCR Chapter, and Dr. Arvin R. De La Cruz, the president of MRSP NCR Chapter. Once again, thank you very much, Engineer Dylan Josh.
Thank you as well for this opportunity.
Okay. So I hope everyone's still okay and alive. Before we end our event for today, we have some announcement and promotions from MRSP NCR. Let's watch the following videos. Okay, for the promotion of each Smith, let's watch another video. So that is MRSP and Igismet's promotional videos. So for those students or anyone who was asking a question earlier whether on how to be a member of MRSP, you may direct your questions or yes, your questions to the official Facebook page of MRSP NCR with facebook.com/mrsp.ncr. So the membership fees are on the screen right now, and we have discounted rates until December 31. So let's move on. Now we have Adamson Computer Engineering in collaboration with Adamson University Young Educators Association. They have an event called Convergence, Forming a Unity. This is a donation drive that wherein the proceeds will be given to #program COVID of Adamson University, which aims to offer a helping hand for the needy and socially disadvantaged. For the process of donations, you can donate to the following accounts presented on the screen, and then take a screenshot of your donation, then fill out the Google form where you can put the correct information and upload your deposit slip. And then we will make sure that your donation will not go unnoticed. Next slide, please. So for more updates with MRSP, please like and follow facebook.com/mrsp.ncr.ph and its Twitter and YouTube handles, which is MRSP NCR Chapter. There we go. So before we officially close our event, I would like to call on and welcome Engineer Cherry D. Casuat, a faculty member of the Graduate School of Adamson University. Engineer Cherry, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have reached the end of this full day seminar, and I know that you have learned a lot from Engineer Dylan Lopez. So we are very much overwhelmed by his talk or the topics that he discussed. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank our speaker, Engineer Dylan Lopez, for his very timely discussion on commercialization of robotics research. We all know that the relevance of robotics in different fields. Actually, there are $100 billion plus global robotics sectors, which is growing rapidly, and a new generations of robotic systems. So our speaker discussed to us how you're going to produce the most valuable proposition. So he also discussed about the IP and even the technology transfer. Okay, so we are looking forward on seeing you guys having your journey to robotics commercialization research. So may this seminar ignite your passion in robotics, and I'd like to thank you all, and may you have all the pleasant afternoon. Good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Casuat, for that wonderful closing remarks. And before we bid our farewell to each other, may I request everyone to please turn on your cameras for our photo opportunity with everybody. Yes.
Okay, so meron tayong 5 slides. Wait for a while. Okay, so ready na ba ang lahat? 1, 2, 3. Okay, next. 1, 2, 3. Wait lang. Okay, pangatlo. 1, 2, 3. Pangapat. 1, 2, 3. Last. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody. So that concludes our webinar. May we see the evaluation form link on the screen. And the evaluation link has been shared to our screen. Please answer the evaluation form for us to improve our services and performance by giving you webinars and workshops. And the evaluation link is now on the chat box of the Zoom app. So please answer the evaluation form. Again, I would like to personally and as in representation of MRSP to thank Engineer Lopez, Engineer Temprasa, and Engineer Kasuat for your contributions to this webinar. We also want to thank all the organizations and universities from all over the country in being present on this event. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe and see you next webinar on October 2021. Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you po sa lahat ng umaten at nag-participate.
Additional announcement, the evaluation form will only be good until 9 o'clock p.m. Again, the evaluation form will expire on 9 p.m. Thank you.
Said I was your favorite.